Anabolic androgenic steroids, amphetamines. You may know them as PEDs, performance enhancing drugs, test, gym candy, Bondsberries, Primo. Call it what you want. It's all the same. Steroids. It's been the unspoken elephant in the room of sports. The dark secret we ignored for decades in the Olympic Games until we didn't. On August 26, 1960, Danish cyclist Knut Jensen died during his 100-kilometer team trial race in the Summer Olympics in Rome. When he collapsed, he fractured his skull. It was originally thought that he died due to heat exhaustion, but traces of an amphetamine called Ronicol, later found in his bloodstream, proved otherwise. Fast forward 7 years, another tragedy. Tommy Simpson, a British cyclist and Sports Personality of the Year winner, dies on July 13th during the 13th stage of the Tour de France. The perpetrator? Amphetamines. At this point, the International Olympics Committee, the IOC, established the Medical Commission to begin their eternal fight against doping in sports. The following year, in 1968, the IOC began its first official testing during the Olympics, based on the list of banned substances the committee issued the previous year. During the 1968 Mexico City Olympics, the first ever disqualification took place. Swedish pentathlete Hans Gunnar Legenwall tested positive for excessive alcohol, at which point he and the entire Swedish team were forced to return their medals. Though the IOC had dealt their first punishment against doping, there were still limitations. By the Munich Games, in 1972, they had significant strides. They initiated the first full-scale comprehensive testing that examined 2,079 different samples. This included narcotic analgesics and 3 classes of stimulants. And 4 years later, by the 1976 Games, they added steroids to their banned substance list. 11 athletes were disqualified that year. So, has substance abuse always existed in the Olympics? Or is this an advent of the times? We can only speculate, because the actual data only supports use as far back as testing began. There is some evidence, though, that even as far back as 776 BC, the original Olympic Games carried out by the ancient Greeks incorporated the use of PEDs. From this and other accounts, we can conclude that there is certainly continuity within the culture of doping. It seems it has been around from the beginning, and clearly it is here to stay. Do you know anything about the history of performance-enhancing drugs in the Olympic Games? How long has this phenomenon been occurring?
I know a little bit of it as a novice. Was a young man growing up in the 70s. The Olympics had a lot of controversy around the East German swimming team, the women's team actually, and it was claimed that they had been using a lot of performance enhancing drugs, hence their amazing medals wins that they had. So I remember that, and then also in the 90s through the early 2000s, baseball, Major League Baseball went through a incredible time of performance enhancing drugs, steroids. Steroid use was rampant.
Again, how long has this phenomenon been occurring?
Well, for in terms of my ability to witness it, I would say from the 70s onward, but it's probably been going on since the late 60s.
Do you think the use of performance-enhancing drugs has influenced or changed the Olympic Games?
Absolutely. Um, it, it's created suspicion around many athletes and their great achievements.
Do you think this change has occurred more so because of the advent of testing and the public's awareness? To clarify, has it only influenced the games because there are now consequences?
No, that's a very good question. I think that that testing has gotten better. The media has gotten a hold of it, and so there's a lot more scrutiny. So and then that is on the one end of it. The other side of it is the pressure to compete and win is so great that I think athletes, especially in certain countries, are even forced to use them to better their performances.
Has the social movement toward testing in the Olympics affected you or anyone you know?
Not directly in the Olympics, but I do have a friend, Steve Braun, and his brother Ryan Braun, And Ryan Braun was the MVP of Major League Baseball several years ago, and then it was claimed, alleged through various media sources that he had used performance enhancing drugs, and that had a dramatic effect. In fact, he ended up having MVP taken away, and it had a bet, and it really affected his brother, who we became close with. Was my son's hitting coach for a while when that was going on, for batting coach. So it has affected us.